Why Israel never runs out of water. The desert nation that solved drought. Imagine waking up in a country where rain almost never falls. Rivers vanish before they reach the sea. Summers burn like a furnace. Yet somehow this tiny desert nation has more water than it needs. And here's the strangest part. Israel didn't just solve its own drought, it solved a problem the entire world is still struggling with. A problem that has collapsed civilizations, started wars, and is predicted to define the next century. But how did a country surrounded by drought, sand, and political tension become the first nation in modern history to beat water scarcity completely? Today, we're going deep, not into politics, not into headlines, but into the real, fascinating, and almost unbelievable story of how Israel became the world's water miracle. And trust me, the truth is far more surprising than anything you've heard. The mystery begins. Let's start with a question that seems simple, but the more you think about it, the stranger it gets. How does a nation that's 60% desert, a nation with barely any natural freshwater sources, a nation surrounded by countries constantly battling drought, somehow produce more water than it consumes? Most people assume the answer is desalination, and yes, that's part of it. But if this entire story was just about saltwater machines, Israel wouldn't be a global case study, it would just be a rich country with fancy tech. But what Israel did is something different, more complex, more strategic, and honestly, more impressive. Because the real reason Israel never runs out of water is a combination of 5 breakthroughs, each one surprising, each one connected, and each one built on a mindset most countries still don't have. Let's start with the first breakthrough. Breakthrough number 1, the water crisis that forced a revolution. To understand Israel's success, you have to understand its desperation. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, Israel was running out of water so fast, experts predicted the country would face total agricultural collapse within a decade. The Sea of Galilee, Israel's main water source, dropped to the point where the government declared a national emergency. Farmers abandoned crop cities, struggled with water pressure. Entire communities lived under mandatory water restrictions. And here's the twist. This disaster forced Israel to think differently, not in years, but in decades. Where other countries argued, Israel built. Where others delayed, Israel experimented. Where others hoped for rain, Israel assumed no rain was coming. That single mindset shift would change everything. Breakthrough number 2, turning the ocean into a superpower. Israel didn't invent desalination, but it did something far more powerful. It turned desalination into a national backbone. The Sorek desalination plant. Just one plant produces more drinking water than some entire countries. But here's where it gets interesting. Unlike most nations, Israel didn't treat desalination as a backup. They treated it as a primary water source and built multiple plants, not when they needed them, but long before they needed them. It was pre-planning on a near-military level. And the result? Today, over 70% of Israel's drinking water comes from the Mediterranean Sea, a resource that will never run out. But desalination wasn't enough, because desalination only solves water supply, not agriculture, not sustainability, not long-term resilience. For that, Israel needed something even more radical. Breakthrough number 3, the world's most advanced water recycling system. Here's the statistic that shocks almost everyone. Israel recycles almost 90% of its wastewater. The next closest country, Spain, barely reaches 20%. Think about that for a second. Water that most countries throw away, flush drain waste. Israel treats it like liquid gold. This recycled water isn't for drinking, it's for agriculture, which is where most countries lose the largest amount of water. Israel built pipelines, treatment centers, filtration systems, and an entire recycling infrastructure that moves water like a blood circulatory system. And because of this, Israel can grow crops in places where nothing should grow, export agricultural products around the world, and support farmers without draining the environment. But even this wasn't the final piece of the puzzle. There was something bigger, something quieter, and something every single Israeli citizen became part of. Breakthrough number 4, a water culture built into the nation. Most countries treat water as a background issue. People leave taps running. Cities let pipes leak for months. Governments respond only when there's a crisis. Israel treats water like national security. Because for decades, it literally was. Water education begins in schools. Kids learn how water moves through the country, how treatment works, why conservation matters. Every citizen understands water is life, water is limited, and water must be protected. And here's another twist. Israel has one of the lowest water loss rates in the world because the country invested in fixing leaks, upgrading pipes, and digitally monitoring the entire system. While many countries lose 30% to 40% of their water to leaks, Israel loses about 3%. This isn't luck. This isn't geography. This is national coordination. But all of this, the recycling, the desalination, the culture, still needed one final ingredient, something only innovation could bring. Breakthrough number 5, technology that changed the entire game. You've probably heard of drip irrigation, but you might not know it was invented in Israel. This system changed agriculture forever because instead of flooding fields, it delivers water drop by drop, exactly where plants need it with zero waste. Israel didn't just use this technology. It exported it, shared it, and transformed farming across the world. From India to China to California, desert farms turned green, wastelands produced food, and entire communities survived because of Israeli water tech. But drip irrigation was just the beginning. Israel also built AI-driven water management, digital leak detection, satellite irrigation planning, crop-level moisture tracking, real-time consumption analytics. This wasn't just agriculture, it was precision agriculture. And this combination of innovation, culture, planning, and engineering created something the world had never seen, a desert nation with more water than it needs. The final secret, the mindset that made everything possible. Technology can be copied, pipes can be built, desalination plants can be exported, but the real Israel secret is something no country can buy. It's mindset. Israel assumed the worst planned for the impossible and built systems before they were needed, not after they failed. This wasn't optimism, this was survival. And that mindset turns a desert into farmland, salt water into drinking water, and wastewater into a national asset. It turns crisis into innovation, scarcity into leadership, a desert into one of the most water-secure nations on Earth. So why does Israel never run out of water? Because it doesn't rely on the sky, it relies on strategy. It doesn't wait for solutions, it builds them. It doesn't hope for rain, it creates water. And it doesn't treat drought as a disaster, it treats it as a challenge that forced Israel to create one of the most impressive water systems in human history. A system every drought-hit country, from Africa to the Middle East to South America, could learn from today. And maybe that's the bigger story here. The real lesson is this: water scarcity is not fate, it's a problem. And problems can be solved if you're willing to think differently.